Morning, everyone. Good morning. Wow, that was resounding. I'm Tricia Gerardet. I'm your facilitator today. Want to welcome everyone here in the sanctuary and those on Zoom. If you are willing and able, please stand and wave to everybody so they can see who's here.
Hi, Zoomies.
We know they're out there, so they like to see us. Please be sure if you have a cell phone that it is turned off or put on vibrate. If you have an announcement, we might still have a minute for you to write one up. But if you have a joy or sorrow you haven't written up yet, there are forms in the back of the room and you can fill it out and I'll make sure I get it and announce it later. If you're new here, please ask any of us with name tags how to access the website or find out how to get involved with the church activities or like to receive our newsletter. Just ask any of us for some help. I haven't seen Deborah Smith here, but Becky Tanner here at the piano will help you get on the mailing list for the newsletter if you would like. We have a few announcements before we begin the service. Today is the fourth Sunday, so we'll have a second collection during worship, and today it's for the Emergency Assistance Fund. This fund, run out of the church, helps the homeless and working poor in Sierra Vista get tents, work shoes, or pay off part of a utility bill. It's also available for people in this church who may be having financial difficulties. Today, after worship, we will have a meeting about our bylaws. Please stay to go over the changes, ask questions, and eat pizza, but after we do the work. After, yes. That's teasing, I know, but that's, bribe, incentive, something. This Friday would have been the first Friday hike, but if you have looked at the weather at all, as our trip leader Molly has done, unfortunately Friday is predicted to be very cold and very wet, and so the agreement has been among some people that the first Friday hike this month will be first Wednesday. So it's middle of the week now, the following week, so it'll be the 7th. I presume everything else is the same, start time, meet at Circle K in Tombstone, meet here at 10. So check with Molly Anderson, raise your hand. Yep. If you're interested in the hike, which has now been postponed. Circle Suppers. We're going to try to restart Circle Suppers as a way to meet with each other. Talking over food has always been a great way to get to know people. So it can be done any number of ways. We don't care how you do it. We just want people to get to know each other better. Instructions and sign-up sheet are in the coffee room. Let's see. This afternoon at 4 p.m., Cochise County Supervisor Ann English will be the featured guest with Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. You must register at CEBV.US to get the Zoom link. All right, I think I've covered. Tina's office hours will be Tuesday, January 30th, 12 to 2. Of course, she can meet with you another day. Just call or text to set something up. Two events come together fortuitously this week. First, UUA Side with Love celebrates 30 Days of Love from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, January 15th, to Valentine's Day on February 14th. This week, the theme they suggest is reimagining climate justice and suggest ways we can revision and act to make a difference on this topic. Secondly, February 1st or 2nd is the day we celebrate Imbolc, as you've heard, pagan holiday that falls halfway between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. There are multiple rituals around St. Bridget or the goddess Bridget, we've heard, associated with Imbolc, and they emphasize creativity, poetry, and renewal. In today's worship mashup, we celebrate the earth and innovative ways we can work to save it. For our chalice lighting, the opening words for today come from Ben Sewell, a lifelong UU who has attended First Parish in Lexington since childhood. He is a worship associate, requiring him to put finger to keypad. He apologizes to those in other parts of the world, like here, that his perspective is unabashedly New England-centric, but his words, slightly altered because we don't usually have deep snows here, fit our recent and our upcoming cold weather. Let us hold a quiet moment together as our chalice is lit. As the wild wind bites, so does the still flame warm us. As the freezing rain hits our doors, so does the gentle flame bring us out. As the crackling cold air stops our breath, so does the radiant flame draw from us the words we need to give and to receive. Words of greeting, words of comfort, words of solace, words to challenge our minds, and words to bring us to action. Let us gaze upon this, our common flame, so that we remember who we are and what we can do when we are together. We're a caring congregation and share what gives us joy and what weighs heavily on our heart. I have some joys and sorrows. I'll see if there are any more in the back. Nope. Okay. I invite Jesse to come up to say a few words.
Ooh, goodness. Static.
Set up for tall people.
Coming out with a bang. Good morning, everyone. As most of you may have noticed, my grandmother Alice and I haven't attended since the Christmas Eve service. Shortly after Christmas, she took a little turn towards the finish line. Christmas has been a bittersweet time for her for the past 22 years. My grandfather passed the day after Christmas of 2001. The interesting thing is this year, I don't believe she was consciously thinking about that memory, but being a pattern of 22 years, I think it was kind of ingrained. And so it just seemed for her an appropriate time to kind of, take that next step. She just kind of seemed to, check out a little bit more mentally. She was a little more tired, not as present. It actually seemed to be kind of a quick turn, but then she kind of stabilized and to a point where she could still continue our normal daily routines other than exercises. She seemed to be a little too tired for keeping up with that, so we kind of let that rest. Let's see here. Saturday 2 weeks ago was kind of the next noticeable shift. My mom was watching her that day, and she took her for a little walk, and when she got back from the walk, she just couldn't really stand on her own 2 feet again. At that point, just was noticeably fatigued, and then that night at dinner, she was having a hard time keeping herself upright. So she was spilling quite a bit, trying to spoon into a sideways stance. But so the next morning, I was watching her Sunday morning, and it was kind of the same thing. She was having a hard time sitting upright, and so Sunday 2 weeks ago was kind of the last, was kind of the official like next step. And from that day on, we did just keep her in the bed where she could just kind of rest. And it was just kind of from there a slow process. We did bring hospice in, and they were helpful. But it was a very, gradual, peaceful process. She just kind of took the normal steps of slowly not eating and then not drinking. And but the nurses were very pleased with, what they saw in her process and how peaceful and comfortable she was. She wasn't in any pain. We didn't really have to give her any medications. She hasn't been on any medications for over a year. So she was just peaceful and content and kind of going through the natural cycles. And one thing I just forgot to mention is her birthday was actually Wednesday the 17th. And that might have been announced here. On her side of the family, her two closest relatives were her two of her aunts that she actually grew up with. When she was 5 years old, her parents weren't able to care for her, and so she was handed over to her grandparents and was raised by her grandparents with her 3 aunts. And one of them was 8 years older, and then the other was 10 years older. But she lived with them towards the end of their lives, but both of them passed just days before their 94th birthday, a couple years apart. So I was curious if she was going to continue that pattern, because her 96th birthday, once again, was on the 17th, and it was, Sunday was, her birthday was on the Wednesday, and that previous Sunday was that noticeable turn. So I was curious if she was going to continue her family pattern. But she powered through. She made it to her birthday and then 9 days beyond. So it was nice that we got to share her 96th birthday with her. It slowly came to an end, and it was interesting because I don't know if I had voiced this to anyone else, my family or anything, but I was kind of using the analogy of a leaf, just slowly dying and crumbling. It's a very natural process. It's not a rapid one. We see the colors change, and then we see it just slowly, lose its moisture, turn brown, and when I was going through her stuff later on, I found this card that was kind of randomly mixed in. She has a whole box of cards that I would have thought, but it has a leaf on the front of it, and it says, "Those we hold in our hearts never truly leave us. They live on in the kindness they showed, the comfort they shared, and the love they brought into our lives." In the past 2.5 years, all my attention pretty much has been on her, and I'm very thankful for that opportunity to have taken care of she was my last grandparent left, so to have that connection and be able to help her. When we took her on at 93.5, she was basically at the end there. But through just everything I've learned and studied about health and nutrition and all that, we were actually able to turn her health completely around. Within 1 year, she was off of all medications, and that was over 1.5 years ago. And the doctors have been, one of her most recent visits, the doctor said she's the healthiest 90 plus that she's seen. And so that was all reassuring, and just very grateful to be a part of that process and the lessons learned. Being in my early to mid 30s, usually someone my age would be starting a new family and kind of that explosion of new life with children. But I was, more first off dealing with my grandparent, who is the opposite. There are some similarities between children and elderly, I found, but that, a lot of patience, slowing down, whereas, I'm kind of in that phase of, jumping in the new life. But so it was a really good experience to learn how to slow down, be more patient. And she taught me a lot. She was a teacher, in her career life. And although she wasn't teaching me things directly, she taught me a lot indirectly on just all different ways of handling things. And so I'm very thankful for all that. So she officially passed Friday afternoon after her, my mom and I had been talking to her. She wasn't responsive. Her son called, and he was the last one that spoke to her. But it was a very peaceful passing. The nurse, it was actually really good timing because the nurse was on daily visits at that point already and had already planned on being there around like 12:30 or 1. And so just with about 30 minutes after she passed, the nurse was already planning to be there. So the timing all worked out. And so as far as like a joy or sorrow, for me, I see it more as a joy because, it was something obviously expected. It was coming, but it's more of a joy to celebrate her 96 years of a very good, long life. And being a smoker for 70 years, she had good genetics to last that long. Yeah. So she impressed a lot of people. But we're ultimately thankful that we got to spend these remaining years with her, that she got to enjoy her remaining years with us. And I want to thank all of you for all your support and all your friendships towards her. And that's one of the main reasons why we came was for that companionship, and it was one of the few options and opportunities she had to engage. So I appreciate all of your support and kinship to her. As for me moving forward, tomorrow actually my mom and I are heading out to California to visit her, my grandmother Alice's younger half-brother. He's 15 years younger, and he's potentially in need of care. So we're going out there to discuss with him what options there might be. If he's only 81, he's still relatively independent, but health-wise he's not doing great, and he can't see very well, so he can't drive anymore. So he has some options. We're going to be discussing those options and see if we bring him down here, if we just move him into an independent facility. So my next steps aren't clear yet, but that is a potential. One other option I have been considering is, I don't have any certifications or anything, but I've considered opening myself up for just like donation-based consulting of, if anyone who's curious what we did to turn her health completely around, to get her completely off all medications, and, to get all the positive feedback that we did. And so I just want to open to share what I've learned and over the past 2.5 years just with her, but also the past 12 plus years that I've been studying all, health and wellness in general. One thing I forgot to mention though is some of the quotes from the nurses. One of the first nurse we had quoted that, she's a marvel, and this nurse enjoyed just sitting there and being in the presence of my grandmother and just the peace, because obviously nurses see so many various things and lots of pain or discomfort or agitation or just all levels, but she was just very peaceful. And so this nurse mentioned she's a marvel, she's a rarity. And then the final nurse that had been seeing her daily until the end quoted, this was one of the most peaceful deaths she had seen. So that was obviously like really reassuring for us as a family, just to know, she was in her own home, in her own bed, with her family, and just very, very peaceful and good health, no pain. The only thing we had given her, the nurse recommended, was for shortness of breath. They provided morphine, and so we just gave her a little bit of morphine just to help. I guess they said it opens up the chest and allows her to breathe. But towards the very end, she actually stabilized. Her breath was very normal. We didn't really have to. So she wasn't on all these medications just to keep her comfortable. She was already comfortable. We just gave her a little bit of morphine just to assist, So, just very thankful for the whole process, all the good feedback. And, and once again, thank you to all of you for all of your support and care. So, thank you.
It was a pleasure to get to know Alice a bit. Thank you. We have one other sorrow, that Patricia Burr's brother-in-law, Dan Beeger, recently died. So please keep Patricia and her sister Shelley, Dan's wife, in your hearts. Chris is waving at me. Chris is saying that she has no place to live right now, I think I heard. Okay. We do have a joy from Morris and Molly, who will be first-time great-grandparents sometime today. So a baby, it's known that it will be a baby girl named Azul, which is Spanish for blue. We may be distracted during the bylaws meeting. Imagine that.
I think it's lovely that in Ireland, spring starts now, because somewhat like your life, Jesse, has been kind of a winter with promise of spring. We need to go through those periods, sometimes to say goodbye to our past, sometimes to walk with someone we love. There are transitions in our lives, and we need to take time to dream of a future. Whenever I talk about environmental justice in the church, it's painful, it's hard, and everything is speeding up and becoming worse. So how do we face it? I think of it as kind of an Imbolc. The news is like a cold winter, but there are little bits of hope, right? Just as the earth keeps on growing and changing and new life comes every spring, if we do the right things, there may still be hope. But me standing up here and preaching at you about it and making you depressed, is that going to make a difference? Maybe. Yeah. Heather has a point. It might. But I had two professors in seminary who changed me. Well, one of them came and beat me over the head, and I didn't change. And the other one, I fell in love with him and his life. And so when he was hurt as an African-American man, I realized, oh, I do some of those awful racist things too. I am changed more by honey than by vinegar myself. So I wanted us to think about ways we could celebrate the earth, ways we could love it. Is it ever painful to you to notice how beautiful things are and worry that we will lose them, right? When I first moved to Sierra Vista, we heard this terrible cry when the rains came. We thought a baby had been abandoned in our wash. We don't hear that cry of those toads anymore. They don't estivate there anymore because we had a very long, dry summer with no rain. And we had one summer where they came out, but there wasn't enough rain. It's scary to love and admire the beauty of our earth, but I think it's really important to do. And Side with Love suggests there are 4 R's of social transformation, especially working with the climate. Resist, you work against the current system. Reform, work within it. Reimagine, envision a just new system. And recreate, create models for that. So Jakaran Oloya, UU and recent graduate of Starr King, describes it for children. Resist is like standing up against the wind. 4 years ago, about right now, as a church, 12 of us resisted the building of the wall across the San Pedro. But that's really the last time we've gone out with signs and stood together. Reform is like trying to change the direction of the wind. You're working with the system, but you're moving it. Reimagine is dreaming of a new, gentle breeze. And recreate is making wind chimes that gives the wind a voice through music. Now, some of us do each of those things. I don't think any one of us does all of them, right? Think about what makes your heart sing. What are you already doing? Are you people who reform? Are you people who resist? Are you people who reimagine? Or are you creating that new world? What do you do? Janine Gelsinger, who used to be the executive director of UU Justice Arizona, used to say, there's a role for you in the resistance. Maybe you're just driving the car and taking people to protest. Maybe you're watching people who are arrested and following them and making sure you know where they are. You don't always have to be the person to chain yourself to a saguaro, let's say, right? There's a different role for you. And each one of us can take a different role. It's painful, but it's so important. I want all of you to think of something beautiful you've noticed today outside in nature. We are so lucky that most of us drive here through something very pretty, can look out our windows and see mountains, right? That we are immersed in this. And I want you to think about that and reimagine, because that is what brings life and hope and joy. Children working on this today were told to just sit there and imagine a world in which we have better transportation, where we aren't eating as many animals because that helps the environment as well. A world in which we are protecting the rainforest because that is the lung of this world. A world in which we protect our oceans that are so integrally part of our life and our world and are being so hurt by hot air. Imagine a different way to be. And I wanted to close with these words by Thoreau. Though I do not believe a plant will spring up where no seed has been, I have great faith in a seed. Convince me that you have a seed there, and I am prepared to expect wonders. So plant your seeds, dream, build, reform, resist, and they will take root. Thank you.
Our closing words are a combination of readings from Reverend Nancy McDonald Ladd, the senior minister of River Road Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Bethesda, Maryland, and Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern, the minister of Palo Alto Unitarian Universalist Church in Palo Alto. We are the children of life's longing for itself. Out of the infinite, we come for these brief days, not just to grieve, but to reimagine a way for ourselves and for all those yet to come. May we give ourselves the chance to grow into what we can become, souls sensitive to beauty and hearts open to creativity. May we not shrink and wither with fear, but embrace the springs of courage within us, now and in the days and months to come. So now, when we take fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take its light and warmth with us, multiplying their power and creativity and vision by all of our lives and sharing it with the world. Postlude. Go in peace, and don't forget the bylaws, noon-ish.